The air in that auditorium was thick. Hundreds of bodies pressed together, the smell of perfume and anxiety and hope all tangled up in the recycled air. I was sitting 17 rows back, center section, and my palms were sweating through the program they'd handed me at the door. 8 years. The number kept cycling through my head like a stuck record. 8 years, and we were finally here. When they called her name, Dr. Elena Castellanos, I stood up before I even realized I was moving. My hands came together in applause that felt like it was echoing from somewhere deep in my chest, from that place where I'd stored every canceled vacation, every frozen dinner eaten alone at 9 p.m. Every morning I'd dragged myself to a job site at 5 a.m. because the tuition payment was due and we couldn't be late, not even once. I clapped until my palms stung. This was our moment, our achievement. I'd bought a new shirt for this, light blue, still had the creases from the package because I'd opened it that morning. I'd requested the day off 3 weeks in advance, made sure my supervisor knew this wasn't negotiable. After everything, I was going to be there when she walked across that stage, when we walked across that stage, in a way, because that's what 8 years means, doesn't it? It means you stop thinking in terms of you and me and start thinking in terms of us. The diploma clutched in her hands caught the light as she descended the stage steps. Gold lettering, official seal, proof that every sacrifice had been worth it. At least, that's what I thought. The ceremony ended around noon, and the auditorium emptied in that chaotic way crowds do, families clustering together, cameras clicking, someone's grandmother crying happy tears near the exit. I made my way out to the parking lot, found our car in the section where I'd carefully parked it that morning, in the shade so it wouldn't be hot when she was ready to leave. I stood there watching through the glass doors as she posed with her classmates, that diploma held like a trophy, like a golden ticket to somewhere I suddenly wasn't sure I had a seat. My phone buzzed with texts from families making dinner plans. Someone suggested a restaurant downtown. Someone else mentioned a celebration that evening. I was waiting to see what Elena wanted to do. Whatever she wanted. After 8 years of everything being about what she needed, what her schedule demanded, what her stress level could handle, today she got to choose. She finally walked toward the car 15 minutes later. The sun was high and bright, and I had to squint to see her face clearly. I was already smiling, already reaching for her, already opening my mouth to say something about how proud I was, how far we'd come, how everything was going to be different now, just like she'd promised over and over for 8 years. That's when she handed me the manila envelope. The weight of it was wrong. Too thick for a ceremony program, too official for a graduation gift. My fingers fumbled with the clasp, and I looked up at her, some stupid question forming on my lips. "What's this?" "Divorce papers." She said it the way you'd say grocery list or dry cleaning receipt. Flat, factual, final. I stood there holding that envelope, and for a moment, I swear this is true, I forgot how to breathe. The parking lot sounds kept going around me, car doors slamming, engines starting, laughter from a family walking past. But I was in this bubble of silence, staring at this woman I'd been married to for 8 years, and she was looking back at me like a stranger, like I was the receptionist at a doctor's office, and she was just dropping off forms. "Are you serious right now?" My voice sounded strange, too high, too thin.
"Dead serious." She shifted the diploma from one hand to the other. "Look, I don't need you anymore. I have my degree, I have job offers, I have a future. You were helpful during school, but that chapter of my life is over." Helpful. The word landed like a slap. 8 years and I was helpful. Like I was a study app. Like I was a library card. Like I was something you use until you don't need it anymore and then you just return it. So what was I then? I heard myself ask. Some kind of financial aid program? She shrugged. Actually shrugged. You knew what you were signing up for. I was clear about my priorities from day one. Medical school came first. Now I'm a doctor and I want to start fresh. No dead weight. Dead weight? Those two words did something to my insides, something sharp and cold and permanent. 8 years of my life, of working 50-hour weeks, of learning to cook because we couldn't afford takeout, of celebrating her exam scores like they were our victories, of planning our future around her future, and I was dead weight? Her colleagues were starting to gather near their cars, probably wondering why we were having what clearly looked like an intense conversation in the middle of the parking lot. Some of them I recognized, faces from the few department parties I'd attended over the years, always standing awkwardly in the corner while they talked about things I didn't understand, couldn't contribute to. They all knew who I was, the husband who worked overtime to pay their friends' tuition, the guy who showed up late to events because his shift ran long, the one who always looked tired. I opened the envelope. My hands weren't shaking. They should have been, but they weren't. Everything was already filled out. Line after line of legal language, but what jumped out were the specifics. She got the car. She got the apartment. I got what the law required, the bare minimum, the scraps. You've really thought this through, haven't you? I'm not stupid. I know what I want. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and I realized I was seeing her clearly for maybe the first time in 8 years. This woman standing in front of me, still in her graduation gown, diploma in hand, divorce papers ready to go. She'd planned this. While I was requesting the day off work, she was filing paperwork. While I was buying a new shirt, she was deciding exactly how to divide our life. And something in me just let go. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a pen, blue ink, the same pen I'd used that morning to sign the card I'd bought her, a congratulations card that was still sitting in my truck, with its cheerful message about new beginnings and proud moments. I signed every page, right there in the parking lot, in front of her medical school colleagues, with families celebrating around us. I ended our marriage with the same casual efficiency she'd started this conversation. "There," I said, handing the papers back. "Congratulations on your graduation and your divorce." Her mouth actually dropped open. I watched her face cycle through expressions, shock, confusion, maybe even the beginning of anger. She'd expected something from me, drama probably, begging maybe, tears definitely. Some kind of scene that would let her feel like the decision was difficult, like walking away from 8 years meant something. What she got was my signature and my back. "Wait," her voice cracked slightly. "That's it? You're not going to fight this? Try to talk me out of it?" I turned to look at her one last time. Why would I fight for someone who just called me dead weight? Then I walked away from the car. My car, technically, since I'd been making the payments. But I walked away from it anyway. I walked away from her colleagues who were starting to whisper, from the diploma she'd earned, from the future she'd planned without me. I just walked. Behind me, I heard one of her classmates ask, "Who was that guy? And why did he just walk away from his own car?" I kept walking. The sun was hot on my shoulders. My new shirt was sticking to my back. And with every step I took away from that parking lot, I felt something strange happening inside my chest. Not pain, not yet. That would come later, in waves, when I was alone. But in that moment, what I felt was something like space. Like I'd been holding my breath for 8 years and suddenly remembered how to exhale. She wanted a fresh start, no dead weight. Perfect. She was about to find out exactly how much weight I'd been carrying. 3 days, that's all it took. 3 days to disappear so completely that it was like I'd never existed at all. And the beautiful thing, the thing that kept me moving through those 72 hours, was knowing she wouldn't even notice until it was far too late. Friday afternoon, I was sitting in our apartment, my apartment, I kept reminding myself, my apartment, with a legal pad and a pen, making lists. Not the kind of emotional, scribbled-through lists you make when you're falling apart. Clean lists, methodical lists, the kind of lists you make when you're executing the plan.
Bank accounts, utilities, subscriptions, lease agreements, phone contracts, everything that had my name on it, everything I'd been managing while she studied, everything she'd assumed would just keep working because it always had. She'd been so focused on her career that she'd never paid attention to the mechanics of our life, never noticed that I'd quietly switched the rent payments to my personal account 2 years ago when we'd renewed the lease, never looked at the utility bills to see whose name was on them, never questioned who was paying for the internet, the electricity, the Netflix subscription she used every night to unwind after studying. The lease was in my name, only my name, because when we'd moved into this place 4 years ago, she was still a student with no income, and landlords want to see pay stubs. Saturday morning, I started making calls.
Yes, I'd like to close my joint account and transfer my portion to a new account at a different bank. The customer service rep was cheerful, efficient. She had no idea she was helping me erase 8 years of financial entanglement. The new bank was one Elena had never heard of, small and regional, the kind of place she'd never think to look. I need to cancel the electricity service at this address, effective immediately. The utility company didn't care why. They just needed confirmation that I was the account holder and that I understood there might be a final bill. I understood perfectly. Internet, gas, water, one call after another, and with each one, I felt lighter. The phone number was trickier. I couldn't just cancel it because I needed a phone, but I could transfer it to a new carrier, get a new number, make sure that the old number she had saved in her contacts would just stop working. One day she'd call and get that 3-tone disconnect sound, and she'd realize I was gone. By Saturday afternoon, I was loading my truck. It's funny what you realize you actually care about when you're forced to choose. Clothes, but not the nice ones I'd bought for her work events. Tools, every single one, because I'd paid for them with my overtime money. My grandmother's china, the set Elena always said was too old-fashioned, taking up too much cabinet space. My record collection, vintage jazz and blues that she complained about whenever I played them. I left behind the furniture we'd bought together, left the kitchen gadgets, the decorative pillows, the framed photos on the walls. She could have it all. None of it meant anything anymore. Portland, Oregon. I chose it because I'd never been there, because I didn't know anyone there, because it was far enough away that even if she tried to find me, she'd be searching in the wrong region entirely. Clean slate, new city, no history, no connections, no trail leading back to the person I used to be. The drive took 2 days. I stopped at a motel somewhere in Nevada, slept 4 hours, and kept going. When I crossed into Oregon, rain was falling, that soft, persistent Pacific Northwest rain that makes everything look clean and new. It felt like an omen. The apartment I found was nothing special. 1 bedroom in a complex 15 minutes from downtown, 3rd floor with a view of the parking lot. But the carpet was clean, the kitchen was functional, and the lease didn't require a cosigner or an explanation of why I was starting over in a new city. I signed it on Monday afternoon, moved my boxes in on Tuesday, and had a job interview lined up for Wednesday. Meanwhile, 800 miles away, Elena was discovering what fresh start actually meant. I know this because, even though I'd cut contact, word has a way of traveling. Mutual acquaintances who were more loyal to gossip than to either of us. People who couldn't resist updating me on the slow-motion disaster unfolding in the life I'd left behind. The rent was due on the 1st. She tried to pay it on the 2nd, probably figuring a day late wouldn't matter. Except the landlord wouldn't take her money. The lease wasn't in her name. She wasn't authorized to pay. She'd need to contact me to take over the lease or find a new place.
She tried to contact me. The number didn't work. The electricity shut off 3 days later, then the internet. Then, because she still didn't understand what was happening, she sat in the dark apartment trying to figure out who to call, who to yell at, who to demand fix this obvious mistake. The texts started arriving to my new number. I'd given my sister instructions to forward any desperate messages, just so I knew what was happening, but I'd also told her not to respond, not to confirm anything, not to give Elena even the smallest hint that I was monitoring the situation. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear." I deleted each one after reading it. No response, no acknowledgement, just silence where I used to be. The calls started during week 2. My sister sent me a screenshot, 27 missed calls in one day from Elena's number. I imagined her sitting in that dark apartment, because by then the electricity would have been off for days, probably using her phone's flashlight to see, watching the battery percentage drop, realizing that I wasn't coming back. I didn't feel guilty. I felt nothing, like I was reading about a stranger's problems. Week 3 brought a new level of desperation. My former supervisor called me. I'd kept in touch with him because he was a good guy who'd always treated me fairly. "Hey, wanted to give you a heads up. Some woman showed up at the office today claiming to be your wife. Pretty frantic. Wanted your new number, your new address, any way to reach you." "What did you tell her?" "Told her we couldn't give out employee information, even for former employees. She seemed pretty shaken up, said something about you just vanishing." "I don't have a wife," I said. The words came out easier than I expected. "But thanks for the warning." "No problem. She mentioned something about utilities and rent. Sounded like she's in some kind of bind." Not my problem anymore. After I hung up, I sat in my new apartment, my clean, quiet, mine apartment, and thought about what she must be going through, scrambling to find a new place, realizing that her starting salary as a resident barely covered rent in the city where she'd gone to medical school, understanding, maybe for the first time, exactly what I'd been handling all those years while she studied. The foundation, she'd called me, dead weight, but I'd been the foundation, and foundations, when you remove them, leave everything else to collapse. Month 2, she got creative, started contacting my family. My sister called me laughing. She found Mom and Dad's number, called during dinner and gave this whole speech about how worried she was, how unlike you it was to just disappear, asking if they'd heard from you. What did they say? Dad told her, "We don't know anyone by that name," and hung up. Mom wanted to tell her off, but Dad said no contact was better, that you'd clearly made your choice and we should respect it. My parents had met Elena maybe 5 times in 8 years. Every visit cut short because she had studying to do, exams to prepare for, rotations that couldn't be rescheduled. My mom had tried, really tried, to connect with her, asking about medical school, offering to cook her favorite meals when we visited. Elena had been polite but distant, always checking her phone, always with one eye on the textbook she'd brought along just in case. After the last visit, my mom had pulled me aside. "She doesn't really see you, does she, when she looks at you?" I'd made excuses then. She stressed, "Medical school is intense. It'll be different after graduation." My mom had just hugged me and said nothing.
Now, sitting in Portland with rain drumming against my windows, I understood what my mom had seen years before I did. Elena had never seen me. She'd seen what I provided, the money, the support, the stability. But me, the person underneath all that, I don't think she'd ever bothered to look. Month 3 brought her most desperate move. She'd somehow tracked down my new employer, probably through LinkedIn or some professional database. I was in a construction meeting when the receptionist called my cell. "There's a woman on the main line claiming there's a family emergency, says she needs to speak with you immediately." My boss looked up from the blueprints we were reviewing. "You need to take that?" "No. Can you tell whoever's answering to take a message and say I'm out of state on a project, unreachable for 2 weeks?" He nodded, understanding more than I'd said. "Ex-wife?" "Something like that." "Say no more. We'll handle it." That night, my boss called me at home. She waited at our reception for 3 hours, kept asking when you'd be back, if anyone knew which hotel you were at, if she could speak to your supervisor. Finally, security had to ask her to leave. I appreciate you backing me up on this. Listen, he said, and his tone shifted. I don't know the whole story, and I don't need to, but I've been in construction for 30 years, and I've seen guys run from bad situations before. Whatever she did, it must have been bad for you to disappear this completely. You need legal protection, a restraining order or something. You let me know. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. But I didn't need legal protection. Not yet, because the beautiful thing about no contact was that it was protection in itself. She couldn't hurt me if she couldn't reach me, couldn't manipulate me if she couldn't talk to me, couldn't make me feel guilty for choices she'd made. I was free. And freedom, I was discovering, felt a lot like Sunday mornings in Portland. I joined a hiking group, found them through a meetup app, showed up to a trailhead at 7 a.m. on a Saturday and just fit. Nobody knew my history. Nobody asked why I'd moved to Portland. They just welcomed me in, handed me trail mix, and started walking. Sarah was part of that group, graphic designer, 32, with this easy laugh and a way of listening that made you feel like what you were saying actually mattered. We'd been hiking for 3 weeks before we even had coffee together outside of the group, another 2 weeks before I asked her to dinner. I should tell you, I said over our second dinner, Thai food at a place near her studio, I'm recently divorced, like really recently. She took a sip of her wine, considering. How recently? Couple months. It's complicated. Most divorces are. She set down her glass. Do you want to talk about it? I found myself telling her the truth. Not all of it. That would come later, in pieces over months. But the core of it. 8 years of supporting someone, a graduation day divorce, a choice to walk away completely. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good for you." Good for me. For knowing when to walk away. A lot of people stay in situations like that for years, decades even, because they think they owe it to the other person, or because they're afraid to start over. You chose yourself. That takes guts. I'd never thought about it that way. Choosing myself. For 8 years, I'd been choosing Elena, her career, her goals, her future. And in that parking lot, for the first time in almost a decade, I'd chosen me. I like that. Choosing myself. You should do it more often. We were together a year before I even thought about proposing. A whole year of this completely different kind of relationship. We split bills. We took turns cooking. When she was stressed about a project deadline, I listened and offered support. When I was dealing with a difficult client at work, she did the same. It was balanced, equal. Neither of us was the foundation, and neither of us was the dead weight. We were just two people who'd chosen each other. Meanwhile, back in the city I'd left behind, Elena was drowning. I found this out later, much later, from the mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist keeping me updated. Medical residency, it turned out, was not the glamorous, high-paying career Elena had imagined. She was making barely more than I'd been making in construction, except now she had 6-figure student loans hanging over her head. Loans that used to be our problem when she needed my signature. Now they were just hers. The apartment she'd been so excited to have for herself, she'd lost it within 6 months. Moved into a smaller place with 2 roommates, medical students who quickly learned about the graduation day divorce and were not impressed. They were subsidizing the lifestyle of someone who'd thrown away the person subsidizing her. Her work schedule was brutal. 80-hour weeks, overnight shifts, being on call during the weekends she'd planned to enjoy her freedom. The social life she'd envisioned, successful single doctor, going to happy hours and dates and cultural events, turned into catching 3-hour naps between shifts and living on whatever the hospital cafeteria was serving. The car broke down during her 2nd year of residency, major engine problems,
would cost more to fix than it was worth. In the old life, I would have handled it, would have negotiated with mechanics, figured out financing, maybe borrowed from family if necessary. Now she was facing it alone, with maxed-out credit cards and no savings. She took public transportation for 3 months, a doctor riding the bus at 5 a.m. to get to her shift, standing in the cold at 11 p.m. waiting for the bus home. Finally got a loan for a used car with payments that ate up a quarter of her paycheck. That's when the searching really began. Social media first. She probably started with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, but I deleted everything, burned every digital bridge the same day I'd driven out of town, created no new accounts under my real name. I was a ghost. Then she tried mutual friends, but most of them had chosen sides after the divorce, and her side wasn't winning. Hard to get sympathy when you divorced someone on graduation day after they'd paid your way through medical school. People talk, people judge, and people, I was learning, have a pretty good sense of fairness. Year 3, she hired a private investigator, spent $1,000 she couldn't afford on a guy who found old addresses, previous employers, family members who wouldn't talk. He probably gave her a report full of dead ends and disconnected phone numbers, money wasted. Then she did something that probably violated about 15 different privacy laws. She used her access to medical databases, her credentials as a doctor, to search for my name in hospital employment records across multiple states. It shouldn't have worked. It was a desperate long shot by someone who was running out of options, but it did work. I'd gotten a routine physical through my employer's health insurance, standard stuff, blood pressure, cholesterol, general wellness check, the kind of thing responsible adults do. And that physical created a record that showed up in her search, showing a hospital in Portland, Oregon, with employment listed at a major construction firm. She'd found me. After 3 years of searching, she finally had a location, a city, a trail to follow. What she didn't know was that the person she was looking for didn't exist anymore.
The first call came on a Tuesday morning while I was having coffee with Sarah before work. My phone lit up with an unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. Ignored again. By the time I got to the construction site, I had 17 missed calls. Then the text started. I know you're getting these messages. We need to talk about what happened. I made a mistake, and I want to fix it. Please, just call me back. I showed the messages to Sarah that evening. We were at her place, and she was making pasta while I sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through the increasingly desperate texts. She found you, Sarah said. It wasn't a question. Looks like it. What are you going to do? I deleted the messages, blocked the number, and set down my phone. Nothing. There's nothing to do. That part of my life is over. She might not see it that way. Then she'll learn. But Sarah was right. Elena didn't see it that way at all. The calls continued for 2 weeks, different numbers now, borrowed phones from colleagues probably. I blocked each one as soon as I identified the pattern. 17 calls Tuesday, 23 Wednesday, 31 Thursday. She was escalating, getting more frantic with each day of silence. Friday afternoon, I was on site, reviewing blueprints, when my work phone rang. The receptionist from our main office, voice apologetic. Hey, there's a woman here claiming to be your wife, says there's a family emergency. My heart didn't race. I felt calm, cold almost. What does she look like? She described Elena perfectly. Tell her you couldn't reach me, that I'm out of state on a project for 2 weeks. Take her contact information and tell her someone will call her back. Should I actually call her back? No. An hour later, my supervisor called. She waited in the lobby for 3 hours, kept asking if you'd shown up at other job sites, if you'd called in. When she realized we weren't going to help her find you, she left a handwritten note. What did it say? Something about needing to discuss your future together. She seemed pretty upset when security finally suggested she leave. Thanks for handling it professionally. No problem. We don't give out employee information anyway,
but heads up, she seemed really determined. Determined, that was one word for it. Desperate was another. That weekend, she drove around Portland looking for my truck. One of my hiking buddies called Sunday evening. "Dude, weird thing happened today. I was at that coffee shop on Hawthorne, and this woman approached me with a photo on her phone, said she was looking for her estranged husband and asking if I'd seen him. The photo was you." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd never seen you before in my life." She seemed really desperate, though, said she'd been searching for 3 years. "If she approaches you again, same answer. You don't know me." Copy that. Monday brought a new strategy. She'd figured out I lived somewhere in Portland and decided to blanket the city with her search, posted on neighborhood Facebook groups, Nextdoor apps, even Craigslist missed connections, all with the same basic message. "Looking for my husband. We lost touch after my medical residency. Please help me reconnect." Sarah showed me one of the posts Tuesday evening. We were cooking dinner at my place, my actual house now, because I'd bought a small place with a yard 6 months earlier. She pulled up Facebook on her phone. "This is weird. Some woman is posting in all the Portland groups looking for her husband." I looked at the post. There was a photo of me from our marriage, probably taken at some dinner I didn't even remember. The caption was full of regret and promises to make things right. "Sounds like someone who doesn't understand that some bridges can't be rebuilt once you've burned them," I said. Sarah scrolled through the comments. "People are being pretty brutal. Most are telling her that if her husband wanted to be found, he wouldn't have disappeared so thoroughly."
She was right. The comments were harsh but fair. Men don't vanish completely unless they have very good reasons. If someone goes no contact like this, that means serious damage was done. Several women had shared stories about ex-husbands who disappeared, and the consensus was clear. This level of avoidance meant Elena had done something bad, really bad. Wednesday, she found my house. I came home from work to find her sitting in her car outside. She'd been there long enough that my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, flagged me down as I pulled into my driveway. "That woman has been parked there since noon. She's been asking everyone who walks by if they know you. I told her I'd never seen you before." "Thanks, Mrs. Chen. If she approaches you again, feel free to call the police about suspicious behavior." I parked in my garage and entered through the side door, avoided any contact with her car, but she knew I was home now, which meant the real confrontation was coming. The doorbell started ringing around 7 p.m., continuous, aggressive rings that went on for minutes at a time, then knocking, hard, insistent knocking that rattled the door in its frame, then more ringing. I ignored it all, made dinner, read a book, acted like nothing unusual was happening. Around 9 p.m., she started yelling through the door. "I know you're in there. I saw your truck in the garage. We need to talk about this like adults." Her voice was raw, desperate, the kind of desperation that comes from 3 years of searching and finally being this close to the person you've been looking for. "I drove 16 hours to get here. I'm not leaving until you at least listen to me." The neighbors' porch lights were coming on up and down the street, people probably wondering what kind of drama was unfolding on their usually quiet block. I felt bad about that. These were good neighbors, quiet people who kept to themselves. They didn't deserve this. I called the police non-emergency line, explained the situation calmly, factually. "My ex-wife is trespassing and disturbing the peace. She's been here for hours and won't leave." The officer who arrived 20 minutes later was professional. I watched through the window as he spoke with Elena. She was animated, gesturing toward my house, probably spinning some story about love and mistakes and desperate need for closure. He knocked on my door. I answered. "Sir, the woman claims to be your ex-wife and says she needs to discuss important matters with you. Are you willing to speak with her?" "No. We've been divorced for 3 years. I have no interest in any communication with her. I'd like her removed from my property." "Understood. I'll escort her off the premises and explain that she needs to leave you alone." Through the window, I watched him walk back to her car. This conversation was firmer. I could tell by his body language. the way he stood between her and my house. She got in her car, drove away without looking back.
My phone buzzed 5 minutes later. Unknown number. "The police can't stop me from loving you. I'll wait as long as it takes." I screenshotted the message, started a file. If this escalated, I wanted documentation. 3 years of silence, followed by 2 weeks of desperation. She'd found me. But finding someone and getting them back are 2 completely different things. And I was done being found. Saturday afternoon, I was at Home Depot loading lumber into my truck, building a deck, something I'd wanted to do for years, but never had time for when every spare hour was spent working overtime to pay tuition. The sun was warm on my shoulders, and I was actually looking forward to the weekend, to having 2 full days to work on something that was mine, for my house, my life. That's when I heard her voice behind me. "Please don't walk away. Just give me 5 minutes." I turned around slowly. She was standing about 10 feet away, like she was afraid to get closer, like she thought I might run if she moved too fast. She looked terrible, thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing scrubs like she'd come straight from a shift. There was this frantic energy radiating off her, the kind that comes from someone who's been running on pure desperation for so long they've forgotten what calm feels like. 5 minutes for what? I closed the tailgate, faced her completely, made sure my body language was clear. I wasn't running, but I wasn't engaging either. "You had 8 years of chances. You used them all up in a parking lot 3 years ago." I was stressed. The words came out in a rush. Medical school was overwhelming, and I said things I didn't mean. I regretted it every single day since. "Which part do you regret?" I kept my voice level, curious even. Calling me dead weight, or discovering that the dead weight was actually keeping your life afloat. She flinched like I'd hit her. "I never should have said those things. I was scared about starting my career, and I thought I needed to be completely independent to prove I could make it as a doctor." "How's that working out for you?" Her jaw tightened. I'd hit a nerve. Good. "It's been harder than I expected. The hours, the money, everything. I realize now that I gave up the best thing in my life for a career that's not what I thought it would be." I almost laughed, almost. But the sound that wanted to come out wasn't really laughter. It was something darker, more bitter. I swallowed it down. "So, let me understand this. When you thought you were going to be wealthy and successful, you threw me away like garbage. Now that reality hit and you're struggling, suddenly I'm the best thing that ever happened to you? Did I get that right?" "That's not how it was." "That's exactly how it was. You said it yourself. You didn't need me anymore. I was helpful during school, but that chapter was over, remember? Those were your words, Elena. Your exact words." She looked down at the parking lot asphalt. A family walked past us, pushing a cart full of plants, the kid asking about getting a puppy. Normal Saturday afternoon stuff. Meanwhile, we were standing here dissecting the corpse of a marriage that had been dead for 3 years. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "Yes, you were, about a lot of things." "I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We had something good before medical school took everything over. We can have that again." I laughed then, couldn't help it. Short, sharp, without any humor in it. Couldn't help it. Short, sharp, without any humor in it. "So you—"
That's not fair. Fair? The word came out harder than I intended. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's been fair. You got exactly what you asked for, a fresh start with no dead weight. I got exactly what I deserved after 8 years of being taken for granted, a life where I'm actually valued. That seems pretty fair to me. I value you. I always valued you. No, I shook my head. You valued what I provided. There's a difference.
She stepped closer, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. The old me, the me from 3 years ago, would have felt guilty, would have softened, would have wanted to fix whatever was making her cry. But I wasn't that person anymore. "I love you," she said, and her voice broke on the words. "I've always loved you. I just got confused about priorities." "No," I said again. "You didn't get confused. You got honest. For the first time in 8 years, you told me exactly what you thought of me and our marriage. The only thing that's changed is your circumstances. People change. I've changed. Have you? Or are you just desperate because being an adult is harder than you expected?" The question hung between us. She didn't answer, and her silence was answer enough. "What can I do?" She was crying openly now, mascara starting to run. "What can I do to prove that I'm different now?" "Nothing." "What?" "Nothing. Because I'm different now, too." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not the same man you discarded 3 years ago. That guy who worked double shifts to pay your bills, he's gone. The guy who accepted being called dead weight and helpful, he doesn't exist anymore. You're talking to someone completely different." "I don't believe that. People don't just become different people." "Sure they do, especially when they're forced to rebuild their entire life from scratch. Want to know what I've learned in the past 3 years?" She nodded, desperate for any opening. "I learned that I'm actually pretty good company when I'm not constantly worried about someone else's stress levels. I learned that I have interests and hobbies that don't revolve around medical school schedules. I learned what it feels like to have conversations that don't end with someone complaining about professors or rotations or board exams." Her face was getting redder with each point I made, not from embarrassment, from anger, like she was just now realizing that I hadn't been sitting around waiting for her. "I learned that when you date someone who has their own career and their own money, relationships become partnerships instead of charity cases. I learned that mutual respect is actually possible when both people contribute equally. I learned that it's possible to wake up on a Saturday morning and not dread the day ahead because someone's going to need something from me." You're dating someone?" "I'm engaged to someone." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually stepped backward, hand going to her chest, like she was trying to hold her heart in place. "Engaged?" 3 months ago. We're getting married in September." "But we're still married." "No," I said, and I made sure she heard every word clearly. "We're not. You divorced me, remember? Handed me the papers on graduation day, signed and everything. Very efficiently handled, actually. I mean, we could still, if you wanted to try again." "I don't want to try again. I want to continue moving forward with someone who chose me when she had options, not someone who only wants me back because her other options didn't work out." She was crying harder now, the kind of crying that comes from deep in the chest. "This isn't how this was supposed to go." "How was it supposed to go?" I genuinely wanted to know. "You were supposed to show up after 3 years, apologize for treating me like garbage, and I was supposed to gratefully accept you back into my life? Is that what you thought would happen?" "Yes, I don't know. I just thought if I could find you and explain." "You thought I'd be sitting around waiting for you to realize your mistake, like I was just on pause until you decided you needed me again."
She didn't answer, but the expression on her face confirmed exactly what she'd been thinking. All this time, 3 years of searching, she'd been imagining me frozen in place, unchanged, waiting. "Here's the thing you never understood about me," I said, and my voice was gentle now. Not kind, but gentle, like I was explaining something to a child. "I don't wait around for people to figure out my value. When you threw me away, I took you at your word and moved on completely. The man you're looking for, he remarried someone who appreciates him from day one. I could appreciate you now. Too late. Someone else already does." I opened my truck door, ready to leave. She just stood there watching me, probably hoping I'd change my mind, offer some kind of hope for reconciliation, some small opening she could wedge herself through. Instead, I rolled down the window and looked at her one last time. "Next time you find something valuable, try not to throw it away just because you think you found something better. Most people only get one chance to make that mistake. I drove away, leaving her standing in the Home Depot parking lot with the same expression she'd had 3 years ago when I'd signed the divorce papers without argument. The difference was that 3 years ago she'd thought she was winning. Now she understood exactly what she'd lost. In my rearview mirror, I watched her get smaller and smaller until she disappeared completely, just like I had. 2 weeks after the Home Depot parking lot, she tried one more time. I was in a project meeting when my supervisor stuck his head in the conference room. "Your ex is back. This time she's claiming there's a medical emergency, says she's a doctor with urgent information about your health." My colleagues looked at me with varying expressions of concern and curiosity. I stood up calmly. "Excuse me, I'll handle this." She was in the lobby, still wearing scrubs from what had probably been a night shift. She looked even worse than before, like she'd been surviving on nothing but coffee and desperation. When she saw me, relief flooded her face, like she thought just getting me in the same room meant she'd won something. "Medical emergency?" I asked. "I needed to see you. And you thought impersonating a doctor with urgent health information was the appropriate way to do that? I am a doctor. You're also a liar. There's no medical emergency, is there?" She shook her head, tears already starting. I felt nothing watching them fall. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling an envelope from my jacket pocket. "I'm going to give you 2 things, and then this ends forever." I handed her the first envelope. "This is a restraining order. Any further contact from you, direct or indirect, becomes a legal matter. That includes showing up at my work, my home, contacting my friends, or creating fake emergencies." Her hands were shaking as she took it. Second, I handed her a wedding invitation. My name and Sarah's name printed in elegant script, along with the September date and Portland venue information. "I want you to understand something. I'm not just moving on from you. I've already moved on completely. The life I'm building has nothing to do with the life we had together." She stared at the invitation like it was written in a foreign language. "My fiancée knows about you. She knows about our marriage, our divorce, your recent attempts to reconnect. She's not threatened by you because she understands something you never did." "What's that?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper.
That when someone chooses you every day, instead of just keeping you around until something better comes along, it creates a completely different kind of relationship. Security had arrived. I'd called ahead and asked them to be ready. They were waiting near the entrance, giving us space, but ready to intervene. "These gentlemen are going to escort you to your car. If I see you again, if I hear from you again, if you contact anyone in my life again, the next conversation will be with my lawyer and the police." She was crying harder now, clutching both the restraining order and the wedding invitation like they might somehow change if she held them tight enough. "I know I made mistakes, but this feels cruel." Cruel would be leading you on, letting you think there was hope, pretending that 3 years of rebuilding my life could be erased with an apology. This is honest. "I love you." I know you think you do, but love isn't something you discover when you're desperate. Love is what you nurture when you have choices. Security stepped forward. She let them guide her toward the exit, probably because she didn't have any fight left. At the door, she turned back one last time. "Will you ever forgive me?" The question caught me off guard. In all of this, all the searching, all the desperate pleas, she'd never actually asked for forgiveness. "I already have," I said. "That's why I was able to move on completely." She left. The glass doors closed behind her, and I stood in the lobby of my workplace, surrounded by the professional life I'd built, in the city I'd chosen, with a wedding to plan and a future to look forward to. I never saw her again. 6 months later, I married Sarah in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Portland. The September sun was gentle and warm, and the air smelled like grapes and possibility. We kept it small, 50 people, mostly our hiking group and work friends. My parents were there. My sister was my best man. Sarah's family filled the other side with laughter and warmth.
When it was time for vows, I stood facing Sarah with her hands in mine, and I meant every word I said. I promise to choose you every day, not just when it's convenient, not just when it serves my purposes, but every single day, in all the ways that matter. She smiled, and there were tears in her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. I promise the same thing, to choose you every day, to see you, to value you, to build something together that makes both of us better. The officiant pronounced us married, and when I kissed her, I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years of my previous marriage. Peace. The kind of deep, bone-level peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be with exactly who you're supposed to be with. At the reception, my supervisor gave a toast. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass, and to knowing when to walk away from things that don't serve you. Everyone drank to that. Sarah's maid of honor gave a toast about partnership and equality and how rare it was to find someone who truly met you halfway. More drinking. My sister's toast was simpler. To my brother who finally figured out his own value. That one hit different. I had to take a moment, blinking back unexpected tears. Later, during our first dance, Sarah leaned in close and whispered, "Are you happy?" "Yeah," I said, and I realized I meant it completely. I really am. No regrets? I thought about it. About 8 years spent building someone else's dream. About a graduation day that ended a marriage. About 3 years of silence and a new life built from nothing. And about Elena standing in that Home Depot parking lot, finally understanding what she'd thrown away. No, I said. No regrets. Because here's the truth I'd learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living so well that the people who discarded you realize they gave away something irreplaceable. Elena wanted a fresh start with no dead weight. I gave her exactly that.
And I built something better than anything we'd ever had together. She got what she asked for, I got what I deserved. We were both finally free. Years later, maybe 4 or 5 after the wedding, I was at a construction industry conference in Seattle. Sarah had come with me, and we were having breakfast in the hotel restaurant before the first session. I was telling her about a project proposal, gesturing with my coffee cup, when I saw Elena walk in with a group of people wearing conference badges. Medical conference in the same hotel, of course. Sarah noticed my pause. "You okay?" "Yeah," I squeezed her hand. "Just saw someone I used to know." She glanced over, intuitive as always. "Her?" "Yeah." Elena hadn't seen me yet. She was laughing at something one of her colleagues said, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. Older, obviously, but there was something lighter about her, like maybe she'd finally figured some things out. "Do you want to leave?" Sarah asked. "Nah, I'm good." And I was, because seeing her didn't hurt, didn't make me angry, didn't make me feel anything except a distant sort of curiosity about how her life had turned out. She saw me eventually. Our eyes met across the restaurant, and I watched the recognition hit her. Watched her take in Sarah sitting across from me, the wedding ring on my finger, the easy way Sarah and I were together. For a moment I thought she might come over, might try one more time to have that conversation. But she didn't. She just gave a small nod, acknowledgement maybe, or apology, or just recognition that we'd both survived, and turned back to her colleagues. I nodded back. And that was it. Sarah was watching me carefully. "You really are okay." "I really am." I picked up my coffee again. "You know what the weird thing is? I think I should thank her." "Thank her?" "For the divorce, for calling me dead weight, for forcing me to start over. Because if she hadn't done all that, I wouldn't have ended up here, with you, with this life." Sarah smiled. "That's very evolved of you." "I'm very evolved." I leaned across the table and kissed her.
It's one of my best qualities." She laughed. "Right up there with your humility." We finished breakfast and went to our respective conferences. I didn't see Elena again that weekend, and I didn't think about her after we left, because that's the thing about actually moving on. Eventually, the person you're moving on from becomes just another person, someone you used to know, someone who was part of your story but isn't part of your present. The dead weight I'd been carrying for 8 years, I'd set it down in a graduation parking lot 3 years ago, and I'd been walking lighter ever since. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are and what you mean to them. Elena gave me that gift. It hurt like hell at the time, but in the end it set me free. And freedom, real freedom, is worth everything.